Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in Los Angeles, California. How is everyone doing today? I hope you're well, happy, healthy, but having some fun. Today in Critter Chat, we're going to talk about a very charismatic and much beloved animal. Today we're talking about meerkats. Meerkats are part of the mongoose family. For many people, especially many Americans, they are probably the most famous or most well-known of the mongoose family. And a lot of the things we'll talk about today with meerkats can be attributed to most members of the mongoose family in general. But meerkats, let's get into that and who they are, what they are. They're kind of tan, brown, grayish animals with dark stripes across their back. They have a short tail. Well, it's not too short. It's probably 2 or 3 inches. And then they have black stripes that kind of run across their back and dark circles that go around their eyes, which actually perform a very important function for them that helps to reduce glare in their environment. Very similar to like athletes like baseball players or football players will sometimes put grease paint under their eyes or tape under their eyes to help reduce the glare to help them see in bright, shiny sunlight. That's what those dark spots around the eyes of a meerkat do for them. They are native to the deserts and grasslands of southern Africa, specifically the countries of South Africa, Botswana, Angola, and Namibia. So kind of the south part of Africa and more on the western part than the eastern part. Where they live, it's never truly desert, and it's never in like mountainous areas or forested areas. They kind of like open grassland area, usually places that are a little hotter and a little drier. They're a pretty small animal. Adults range in size from about 9 to 12 inches in length. And like I said, with about a 3 or 4 inch tail in addition to that. Adults typically weigh just over a pound to about maybe 2.5 pounds, with female meerkats typically being a little bit larger than the males. Female meerkats are also the ones in charge, particularly in a group setting, which they're very, very social. It's kind of the matriarch or the head female meerkat that calls most of the shots. They have long, non-retractable claws, so kind of like a house cat, but the claws stay out. And that helps make them excellent diggers. They live in burrows underground. That's where they sleep. That's where they have their babies. And that's where they spend most of their resting hours. When they're awake, which is usually during the daytime, and in hotter portions of their range, that's going to be more the mornings and the afternoons, which are crepuscular animals that kind of lay low during the heat of the day. So they will sometimes dig those burrows. They will sometimes take over burrows of other animals that are dug like by ground squirrels. Their burrows sometimes get taken over by bigger things than them. Things like aardvarks or hyenas possibly could move in if the burrows get too big. Their burrows have multiple entrances and multiple chambers. So kind of like prairie dogs, it's a very big apartment kind of situation under the ground. They are very social, living in large family groups called mobs, and those can be up to about 40 individuals. And in a mob that is that size, there's actually multiple families that live closely together, with one female of the predominant mob being kind of the boss and all the others kind of falling alongside there. But they work really well together to make sure that they have success as a community, and they each kind of play different roles to make sure that is successful. They eat a wide variety of things. They are a carnivore, so they eat other animals, typically going after things like insects. Insects make up most of their diet, but they will also eat worms, snails, spiders, lizards, small birds, bird eggs, rodents, and scorpions, and sometimes some snakes. With snakes and with scorpions, they are able to do so in a very safe manner. They have a bit of immunity to venom of those animals, and they usually attack those animals in groups. Well, they'll attack a snake as a group. A scorpion, one meerkat can easily take care of one scorpion. That's not a problem for them. Like I said, they rely on their numbers to be safe, and so one meerkat usually stands guard or as sentry for the other animals in the mob as they forage, as they look for food. The photo that I posted earlier today on Facebook and Instagram is of a meerkat sitting on top of a rock at a zoo, but that meerkat is standing guard, standing as sentry, kind of watching out for predators. So even in a zoo setting, they still do that. Pretty much all the time, there's somebody standing guard. Unless they're all very sleepy and tired, then they may all take a nap, but they'll do so in a very safe way so that no predators can get them. So the predators that they're mostly looking out for, they kind of have three main predators. Predators like other snakes, big snakes. Throughout much of their range in Africa, they have to deal with some pretty menacing snakes. There's a rock python in Africa that would be pretty big and dangerous for them. Also things like black mambas. There's a cobra species in Africa. There's a puff adder, which is a very venomous snake. So any of those big snakes in Africa would be a potential predator, as well as birds of prey. So we're talking about any hawks and eagles, possibly even some owls. So they would have to watch out for any big birds of prey. They will react to things like a vulture, which won't even hunt them. Vultures only eat already dead things. But if they see a vulture, they will react to that the same way they will if they see a hawk or an eagle. And then other carnivores would be a threat to them too. So things like jackals, particularly smaller carnivores. And then all of the usual suspects in Africa: hyenas, lions, leopards, cheetahs, and African wild dogs would all be potential predators of the meerkats. They communicate through a series of vocal communications. So if the sentry sees danger, that meerkat will sound an alarm. They will all rush to the closest burrow and kind of pile into the burrows to avoid their predators. If there's a snake that's coming towards their burrow, they can sometimes all run out another entrance, and then they will approach the snake and kind of yell at the snake and try to get it to go away. As a very tight-knit group, they'll stand right next to each other and kind of bark at the snake to try to drive it off. And occasionally they can kill a big snake. They will bite it multiple times until the snake is frustrated and leaves, or if they bite it in the right place, they can do enough damage that they can kill some of those big snakes. Meerkats have excellent senses, so excellent sense of vision and excellent sense of hearing and excellent sense of smell. They also do scent marking. They have scent glands near their tail that they rub around their territory to kind of define their territory. And although they kind of don't always respect each other's territories and territories often overlap, if another mob of meerkats comes up to where a current mob of meerkats is living, they will fight with each other, and that will sometimes be a huge battle, possibly resulting in death of individuals. They are pretty vicious with each other, and they take their bonds with the group that they are part of the mob to very, very seriously, and all other meerkats out there can be kind of threats or danger to them, so they will respond accordingly. They also all help take care of the babies. So when the lead female is usually the one who gives birth, in some of the bigger mobs there may be multiple females giving birth. Sometimes that's tolerated, sometimes that's not. If it's not, the lead female usually drives out any other females that maybe gave birth if she's not okay with it. It kind of depends on up to her. Their gestation period's pretty short, 10 weeks, so like 2.5 months. Um, she gives birth to pups underground. It is usually 1 to 5 pups. Typically there's multiples. Occasionally there is just one. If there's one, that baby gets spoiled and grows really quick. If there's more than one, then they usually stay very close together. Like a puppy or a kitten, they are born pretty much blind. They can't really hear much. They don't move around much. And they don't have a whole lot of hair when they're first born. So they stay underground for about the first 4 weeks or 1 month, nursing from their mom, being guarded by other members of the troop. At about a month old, they start to poke their heads up out of the burrow, and then the other members of the troop will start to help take care of them a little bit more, specifically standing guard and babysitting while the mom goes off to get some food so she can come back to feed them. At about 10 weeks old, they are good to go on solid food, and they stop nursing. By that point, they've been exposed to food that the other adults have brought back, including things like scorpions. So their mom will often remove the stinger of a scorpion and bring back live scorpions for the babies to learn how to kill, as well as other things like insects and other small animals that she would bring back into the burrow for them to practice with. They're usually considered mature at about a year of age. In a wild setting, they can maybe live up to about 10 years. In a zoo setting, they can make it into their early teens. So they don't live super long, but they are also pretty small animals. So that's not a huge surprise. What else did I want to talk about there? With meerkats, they are listed as least concern, so that's very good news. They are not endangered or threatened in any way. Their population is considered stable, and they don't have any major threats, which is also very good. Many parts of where they live can be in protected areas, and they do pretty well in areas that people don't really want the land in those areas because it's usually pretty hot and dry. And so the meerkats prosper and thrive in many of those areas of southern Africa. My experience with meerkats, like many of you, I saw and first heard about them through the Disney movie The Lion King. The Lion King took some creative liberties in that the meerkat there kind of is by himself or lives with the warthog. That is not always the case. Warthogs and meerkats actually don't overlap too much. There's not a lot of warthogs in the area where meerkats live, and meerkats are usually very social with their own kind and not so much with other types of animals. I also, when I started my zoo career at Utah's Hogle Zoo as a volunteer, they did have meerkats there. I did not work with them, but I would sometimes go see them before or after my volunteer shift, as they had babies during the time I was there, and it was super cool to be able to see the babies start to learn and move around their exhibit a little bit more. When I first saw them, the babies were just like this, and then within a couple of months, they were almost as big as the adults, so they grow pretty quick. During my time at working at the Phoenix Zoo, we had a older group of meerkats, and when I started there, I think we had 7. By the time I was wrapping up the end of my time at the Phoenix Zoo, we were down to 1, and that meerkat now lived safely behind the scenes, because one meerkat by itself does not do very well in a setting because there's nobody to stand guard, and it feels responsible to try to stand guard all the time. During my time at the Phoenix Zoo, we lost a couple of meerkats, especially as they got older, to things like old age and disease. But we for sure lost at least 1 or maybe 2 to predators. They just disappeared and we don't know what happened. So even in a zoo setting, that can still happen. That can happen with a wide number of animals. Meerkats are certainly not exempt. There are things like hawks, wild eagles that could definitely be a threat to meerkats in a zoo setting, and that is why they still stand guard and do their sentry duty even in a zoo setting. During my time at the Los Angeles Zoo, we had a during my training period where I was training to be a zookeeper, I did work with the keepers who took care of our meerkats a little bit. At that time, we had kind of some older meerkats that were kind of near the end of their life. And later, as I was a zookeeper, I no longer worked in that area. I worked with hoofed animals. But we got new meerkats in, and they brought them together, a group of boys from one zoo and a group of girls from another zoo, to make a new mob at the LA Zoo. And introductions were a little crazy. Like I said earlier, they don't always respect new meerkats that they don't know, but it's kind of necessary to bring them together to create a new family group. And so it took several months to get them all happily living together. The Los Angeles Zoo recently did have baby meerkats during this time of coronavirus quarantine. So they have posted some photos and videos of them, but since the LA Zoo has been closed since the middle of March, no zoo guests have been able to see them. But I'll be sharing some things on the Facebook page of the baby meerkats at the LA Zoo later on today, so watch for that. I also wanted to talk a little bit about meerkat relatives. As I mentioned at the beginning, they are part of the mongoose family. And during my time in Africa, I did not visit the area where meerkats lived, but I did see some of their wild cousins. And those were some banded mongoose that live in Kenya. And it was super cool to see them. They were out foraging or looking for food in the early morning. And it was really great to see them working together as a family. They also have a lot of very similar behaviors to meerkats in that they stay close together. One will usually kind of keep its eyes out for any predators, and if they see any threat or danger, they all run towards a hole to get underground safely. Banded mongoose are quite a bit bigger than a meerkat, almost twice in length, probably weighing about 4 or 5 pounds. I have a photo of them on my webpage. I'll see if I can get that and post it on the Facebook page later today. But they're super cool to see them running around in the savannas of Kenya. Many other mongoose species kind of behave very similar to meerkats and live in big family groups. They work together to go hunting with one kind of standing guard or all of them kind of being on alert for potential predators. But some mongoose species live singly, specifically some of the bigger species, and they can be found throughout many parts of Africa, Asia, and a little bit into southern Europe. And some of those species of mongoose, because they are excellent hunters and are very good at controlling rodents and snakes, were introduced by people into areas that did not have a lot of predators for those animals and have actually become problem species. Specifically in the island groups of Hawaii and Fiji, mongoose were brought in to control rats and some cases some snakes that were in areas where they were raising sugarcane. When they first planted sugarcane commercially in Hawaii, it came with some rats and snakes, and then to get rid of the rats and snakes, they brought in mongoose. And mongoose have become a bit of a problem in Hawaii in that they are eating native bird species that are now very endangered. Many of the bird species in Hawaii had no land-based predators, so they often made their nest on the ground, and the mongoose will eat birds and bird eggs, so that has decimated populations of threatened and endangered birds in many island areas. So mongoose can become very problematic if they are introduced into areas where they didn't live natively. So that is once again a little bit of a problem that humans have caused in several different areas of the world. There are 46 species of mongoose globally. Like I said, most of them are in Africa, some in Asia, and a little bit in the very southern portions of Europe, and then on some island groups that have been introduced around the planet as well. One of those is very unlike the other mongoose family members in that it doesn't really look a lot like them and it doesn't really hunt a lot like them. I'll be doing a future episode about that species. It is called a fossa, sometimes also called a fossa or just a foos. You may also have heard of these animals. They are the primary predator of lemurs. They live on the island of Madagascar, and I'll be doing a future episode on them. So stay tuned for that coming up in the future. That is all I have to share with you today about meerkats. I hope you've enjoyed what I've shared. I'll be posting some videos and other content on the Zoo Nerd Facebook profile later today, so check that out. And as always, feel free to like, share, follow, and subscribe to all of my content across Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as on my website at jeremythezoonerd.com. Until tomorrow, be happy, be healthy, have fun. We'll see you later.